So, welcome back to the Compassionate Cultures podcast, formerly known as the Coffee and Anti-Racism podcast. If you want to know why it's changed, then go back and listen to another episode. I am Rebecca Hemmings. I'm the CEO of Strawberry Words Training Consultancy, and I have a guest today. I am speaking to Dr. Yeow Poon, and before I bring him in, I'm just going to tell you just some of the roles that he holds, and he's held and holds many. So currently he is the chair of the CARG group, which is also known as the Campaign Against Racism group. And I'm sure if I get any of these wrong, Yao, you're going to tell me. Okay.
Yeah.
He's also the emeritus president of the England China Business Forum, and he's the honorary chair of the Chinese Community Centre in Birmingham. Welcome, Yao. Was
Thank
that
you.
okay? Is that
Yes,
correct? Yes. Okay, good.
yes,
That's a great start.
precise and correct.
Yes, brilliant. So, Yao and I have worked together in the past, and I've always loved the way that you've worked because I find that you're very much a strategic person. You know what it is you want to achieve, and also the ways in which you can get there. So, given that we're now talking about racism, I think you're a great person to gain some insight from, given all your different roles and given the way that you think. And so let's start by me asking you, why did you feel it was important to play a leadership role for the Chinese community in Birmingham?
Why? That is not an easy question to answer.
Mm,
Because when I first arrived in Birmingham in 1990, I wasn't planning to be involved with the Chinese community.
mm,
Uh, but then, about 2 years later, somebody approached me because the founder and chair of the Chinese Community Center in Birmingham is returning to Hong Kong,
mm,
and they desperately need a new chair.
mhm,
Uh, and because I was working in the Birmingham City Council at the time,
mhm.
uh, this person felt that I have the network to actually help the community center to grow.
Right,
Because at that time, the community center was actually in a state of decline.
right.
And there were only about 1.5 staff left, and the money was running out.
Okay.
So, so I agreed to help,
Hmm.
and the first thing I did was to say to them, close the center for 6 months, focus on fundraising,
Hmm.
uh, and after that, getting the money. And because you remember at that time, also the grant funding scene was changing.
Mm,
The government was cutting down on grant funding of voluntary organizations,
right.
and it became more competitive. You have to
Mm,
compete for grants.
hmm.
And so I focus on strengthening the management infrastructure of the
Right,
center
right.
to become more business-like
Hmm.
and not to get involved with local Chinese community politics,
Okay,
because that is just time-consuming and draining. That we
okay.
focus that we focus on providing services
Hmm.
and make sure that we have the quality management systems to win contracts.
Did you have any pushback on that? Because obviously, being the Chinese Community Center, I can imagine. I'm just comparing this to what happens sometimes in African Caribbean community environments, that there's very much a need to want to kind of stick to the ground and work with the people and not formalize too much, because then it might take away from some of the grassroots work that was done initially. Did you get pushback?
There, there, there was some pushback from other groups that
Mm,
gradually lost funding,
right.
and they had to close down.
Okay.
And they became more like social groups, organizing dinners and stuff
Okay.
like that. But but my strategic vision for the center was services,
Okay. Okay.
elderly services, carer services, health services. And
Right.
for that, we need to have the systems to be able to
Yes.
win those contracts. Yeah.
Makes absolute sense. And so that was
And
like, go ahead.
and we were myself, the board, and the CEO and the staff. We were not. We do not want to play local politics with the other community leaders.
Right.
They can have the glory of big celebratory events and
Yes.
festivals and so on.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we do take part. We join in. It's
Yes.
just that I never asked to be part of that leadership group.
And you found yourself in it. But I think that happens to a lot of leaders, that they
Mm.
don't necessarily start thinking that's what they're going to do. But yeah, you clearly had the skills, and you mentioned. So I should say, because I think it might come up, we started to record this podcast last week, and for various reasons we weren't able to continue, mainly internet stuff. But last week when we spoke, you were talking about you had a particular role within the council, and you say it's that role that enabled you to, well, that was the reason you were called upon to do the work. So can you at the Chinese Community Centre, so can you talk a bit more about that role so we get more of your background?
Um, Somehow, I when I interviewed for a job at the Birmingham City Council, I was then an academic a lecturer in Liverpool, and it was a job. It was a post for a internal consultancy unit,
Can I just ask you, so you said you were a lecturer, what did you lecture in?
building science.
Okay.
So I actually had no background in management
Wow.
from an academic perspective.
Yeah.
My background is engineering and
Yes.
science.
Yeah.
Anyway, I saw this advertisement for Birmingham City Council, and they wanted to set up an internal consultancy unit because at that time, Thatcher was just introducing competitive tendering,
Right.
where public services have to compete for their jobs.
Yes.
Um, and somehow I convinced the interviewing panel I was good enough to be appointed at the top of the principal officer
Wow.
grade,
Wow. Wow.
which was PO8. And then above that, you're on contracts for deputy director and director already.
Wow.
So PO8 was the top of the and what I found was that when I started working in the council, most people I met were surprised that I was at the principal officer aide, and some of them were a little bit shocked as well. They expect me to be of maybe a PO5 or 6 at
Right.
the most,
Right.
because
Right.
most of the non-white staff were around the PO5, PO6 level.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
At that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. And did that bother you? Did it bother you knowing that, you regularly came across these microaggressions, that people had lower expectations of you or just didn't think you could be in that position?
No, because I played back at them, in a sense that I in a sense that I surprise them by being smarter than they are,
Mm,
or when I speak, I have better ideas than they have, or my
that's
or that my presentation was more cohesive, more together.
so you are obviously very confident in your skill sets to not even be bothered by the lower expectations or the attitudes that people might.
Mm.
I love that. I love that because, there's a question we're often asked is, well, how do you deal with daily microaggressions? And I do think the way that you view them, your point of reference, or yeah, the way you frame how it happens and your position within that situation, that matters significantly so. So that's really, really interesting. Okay, just a question. So in training, when we're delivering training, whether it's with students or whether it's with professionals,
Mm.
what we find quite often is that whenever we come across many Chinese students, they haven't identified as being ethnic minorities, and I didn't understand this at first. So for instance, I'd say, if you identify as an ethnic minority, please sit on this table for this particular exercise, or, if you identify as an ethnic minority, put your hand up, that type of thing. And time and time again, I'd find that Chinese people wouldn't identify as such. So I asked my friend who is of Chinese origin, and she said it's mainly because most Chinese people are the majority where they come from, and therefore they come over here and don't think they form a part of the minority. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it's only the British. It's only the British-born Chinese that would think themselves as an ethnic minority because they grew up in the system here, and they would have been harassed racially,
Yeah,
often in schools when they were growing up. So
yeah,
they would think themselves an ethnic minority. People that come from mainland China, from Hong Kong, they come from a homogeneous society. So they have no awareness of racial differences.
yeah.
And
That's so
then
interesting. Go ahead, go ahead.
and then people like me who come from Malaysia, we
Mm,
are a multiracial country, so we are
mm,
used to it.
yes, yeah. That's so interesting because I just wonder, how do you have that conversation? Because obviously when we're talking about ethnic minorities, so certainly in a training context, we're talking about some of the difficulties, the discrimination they face, and nobody wants to face that. Nobody wants to think that they're in that category, but if you are,
Mm.
unfortunately, you are. And so, what are your thoughts around saying to someone, actually, well, under the government definition of an ethnic minority, as a Chinese person or you've got a name, hold on, Chinese, East or South Asian person,
Yeah.
um, you are classed as a minority, because I feel like having that, I don't know if I would be the right person to say that, because I feel like in a way it's kind of bursting somebody's bubble. What do you
It,
think?
it depends on who you're talking to.
Mm,
Uh, if you're talking with students, uh, it will make no sense to them because they are here for 3, 4 years, 5 years, and then they return
mm,
back to China or wherever.
mm,
So for them, it is not an issue at all.
mm,
If you're talking to British-born Chinese, then it's
mm.
very real for them.
Yes.
If you're talking to people like me who are from Malaysia or Singapore,
Mm,
we are our self-identity is so strong that we accept that we are labeled for
mm,
census purpose
mm.
as a I can't remember now what is the number they gave us for Chinese East and Southeast Asian. There's
I
a
don't know off the top of my
category.
head.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
there's a number. So
Hmm.
for census purpose, we would tick that box.
Hmm.
And when you apply for staff, you also tick boxes, right?
Hmm.
But emotionally, it doesn't bother us that much.
Mm. I suppose I just have in mind a particular person I had a conversation with who was a professional. I don't know whether she was, oh, I just said she, but you can't identify her.
Mm, mm,
And I felt as though she was born in China but has been here for a long time and is due to stay here.
mm.
Um, she found it very difficult to relate to some of the problems ethnic minorities face, and was very adamant she spoke about those people, those ethnic minorities. So I just wonder, in that sort of situation, would it be, I suppose I can, yeah, it's always useful to say, look, this is how the government defines um Chinese
Or,
people. Yeah,
mm,
yeah, and that's it. That's where the conversation ends, right? Yeah.
yeah. Um, it would vary from person to person.
Mm,
Um, sometimes some of the Chinese immigrants are very insular.
hmm.
Uh, they they do not mix outside their narrow circle of
Mm,
people. Um, Personally, I try to encourage much more wider integration and
mm,
working with other ethnic groups
mm.
so that we do not end up with a Chinese ghetto.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think that translates to the workplace? Do you think, because again, that's what we deal with. We deal with talking about discrimination and anti-racism within the workplace. Do you think that people from a Chinese, East and South Asian background, that they perhaps might be, because they're so insular, could be either missing opportunities, could be creating a rod for their own backs, could just it could help to increase that sense of not belonging? Do you think it's a disadvantage to do that in the workplace?
uh, again, you cannot have a homogeneous view on
No,
this.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Uh, people from mainland China and Hong Kong will be more insular because of the society they grew up in.
Yes.
People from Malaysia and Singapore are very outgoing.
Right.
And we integrate very easily.
Yeah.
And we would actually engage.
Yes. See, even that's interesting. We're constantly learning, and we can make those distinctions within different types of Caribbean culture, or various types of African culture to Caribbean culture, or Jamaican to Trinidadian, and so on. Jamaicans are so much louder than most people from different Caribbean islands, for instance. And so I think this is why it's important to have these conversations, because unless you do, you don't know, and it's very easy to put people into these huge homogeneous boxes. But again, I understand. It's like when I use the term ethnic minorities, like I know that when I use that term, again, I'm doing the same. I'm putting people in the same box. But sometimes just when you're wanting to talk about the discrimination that people face, for instance, it's just useful to have that term. But I do wonder if you feel as though sometimes, because there is these catch-all terms, that Chinese people are often Chinese, East and South Asian people are left out of the conversation.
Overall, yes. Because until very recently, racism and discrimination is not something that the Chinese community talked much about. It was only after the COVID pandemic, in 2020, when there was a very high incidence of racism, and hate crime, that people woke up, and professionals like me begin to have, and the younger people, especially the younger British-born Chinese, begin to have those conversations. At the moment, it's mostly amongst ourselves. There is still insufficient attempts to have conversations with other groups, other ethnic groups.
That's so interesting. Go ahead, because I'm just thinking, racism is something that I've always had to deal with, and many Black and brown people are used to having, in this country anyway, used to having to deal with racism. So, and that's hard, even when it's like, I think I was 25 when I first had my first racist incident. I was working as a supply teacher, and this girl had called me a very racist name, and I just remember it feeling like somebody had stabbed me in my chest. It was physically painful. So I wonder what people from the Chinese community who are now facing racism, which is also known as sinophobia, which is a fear or hatred of Chinese people, what that is like at this late stage in the game, suddenly realizing, being in the UK, that, whoa, racism is real for us. What has that been like?
For the younger people, for the younger Chinese people, they don't like it at all.
Of course not.
And they are reacting against it, and some of them have become more activists.
Yes.
And they want to go on protests and take more direct actions. Although they don't really know how to do it yet, because they are new to these things. And then you have your elderly Chinese people who actually are not, who still don't speak English.
Yes.
And they would not have a voice, in a sense that they would have experienced, because they would have worked mainly in the catering trade. They would have experienced day-to-day racism in the restaurants and in the takeaway. But they will not understand words like sinophobia and stuff like that. Because most of them have, when they first came to the UK, they are mostly of quite low education level. So it's actually the younger people and the more professional people like myself,
Yeah.
who are beginning to kind of take an interest and to respond to the
Yeah.
xenophobia.
And I know that obviously people are individuals, you can't tell one group of people to do the same thing and they'll all respond in the same way. But I'm just wondering, within the workplace, knowing that, you know, Chinese, and I keep saying it, East and South Asian
Mm.
people, often get left out of the conversation or just get clumped or get lost in this term of ethnic minority. What could people be doing to kind of like put their hand up and say like me too, like I'm affected by this, like how can they have a voice within the workplace is what I'm asking.
Um, I I think it will naturally happen more and more
Mm,
because the older generation like myself, we are phasing out
yeah.
of the workplace,
Mm,
and as I say, the younger people are not quiet anymore.
yeah.
And if they feel that they are discriminated against,
Yeah.
they, they, they will fight back.
Yeah.
Um, so 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 my my feeling is that if you encounter Chinese employees that are discriminated against,
Mm,
they will actually want help and support.
yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Okay.
Es-
Okay.
Especially especially anybody under 40.
Mm, yeah.
Those
So just,
those that are in their 50s may want to put their head in the sand and just say
yeah.
forget it, keep quiet.
Yeah.
But the younger ones will not.
And it's similar because I found certainly within Caribbean communities, who have been here for a long time, some of the older generations are so I guess it's different. Some people do put their heads in the sand, but for a different reason. They put their
Mm,
head in the sand because they're tired. They've been doing this for
mm,
talking about it for so long, and they haven't been heard for so long. They're just like, you know what? I'll just be quiet and get on with my job. Whereas the younger ones, again, they're like activists. They're like, no, we're going to make change. And so yeah, it's similar in that way. I was just thinking that I was doing some research the other day on school exclusions, and I saw that some of the highest rates of exclusions were for Gypsy Roma travelers, for mixed race children, for African Caribbean children. But then when I looked at the data for Chinese children, like there was zero exclusions for Chinese children. And I was just thinking, like, it's for that reason why, more people need to speak up. Because we're not these homogeneous groups, and unless we have more conversations like this, or people are putting, what I dislike about what I'm saying, because I'm hearing myself say it, is like, you've got to be that person to make change, when really it should be the workplaces that are making the change. But I think it goes both ways, I think, yes, there's a lot more that organizations can be doing to ensure that they're hearing the voices of those people who are marginalized. But I think equally, we on the other side have to ensure that change is happening. Keep speaking up, because if we're quiet, and we don't have that influence, change won't happen.
Uh, a major reason why you find that Chinese kids are not excluded
Mm,
in the school, as you pointed out, the reason is upbringing.
mm,
Um, we are often called the model community,
mm-hmm,
hardworking, no complaints,
mm,
uh, just get on with it. And most Chinese kids are brought up in a very disciplined way.
mm,
Uh, 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 Obedience, uh, excel in your schoolwork, excel in your extracurricular activities,
mm,
learn 3 or 4 musical instruments.
mm. But
Uh,
isn't that also a stereotype? Because not
it
every
is
single Chinese
it is a
yeah.
kind of stereotype, but but because of that disciplined upbringing,
Mm,
and you know the stereotype of the Chinese tiger mothers,
mm,
tiger moms, um, generally Chinese kids do very well in schools,
mm, mm,
and generally they will be pretty well behaved,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and very rarely will get into trouble.
Yeah. I was just thinking, what I hear a lot of is that, from particularly Chinese students, that, I'm expected to be good at maths. And I think to have that pressure put on you, and you might not be, you could be the one of, a few that's just not that great at it, needs to work a little bit harder. Again, that's a lot of pressure. That's I guess where I'm coming from with that. So it's sometimes a microaggression to say, you're all good at this, and we're going to put this pressure on you because we know that you're coming from that sort of background. Yeah.
I think part of the issue around stereotype is that there is also a grain of truth in the stereotype. The only problem with it is that when it's just applied in a very uncritical way. But behind the stereotype, there is a grain of truth.
No, I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, it depends what you're talking about. But yeah, I hear you. I hear you. All right. Just before we wrap up, I've got one more question. What advice would you give to organizations who want to start or improve on their anti-racism journey and not miss out the people who, we've already spoken about, the Chinese, East and South Asian people, not miss those groups of people out, but to have them equally included in any sort of anti-racism policy or plans?
Are you talking about new groups or groups that has been around for a long time?
Both, because they all are important. So both.
Maybe I can try to talk about that around why we set up a CARG, Campaign Against Racism group, because that would give an idea of our approach. The when there was this rise in incidents against Chinese and East and South Asian people, quite a few groups have sprung up, and some groups are more activists, and some groups are more service providers. They want to provide victim support services. In CARG, partly because the founding members were generally older, people like myself, we make a decision that we not to compete with the others.
Okay.
Yeah. And instead to think about the ecosystem. Because in order to make change, you need to have an ecosystem that attacks the problem from different directions, with different focus and different emphasis.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are people who wants to be activists. That's fine, because you need a battering ram.
Yes.
Times, right? And you need people that provide support services.
Yes.
So we decided that that the niche for us is in the policy making area.
Right.
That what we want is to make change in the long term by influencing institutions.
Yes. And
to become to aim to become more like a think tank that can contribute to thought opinion pieces that can influence policy.
Right.
At the level of the police, the Crown Prosecution Services, and we also chose education.
Right.
Because we feel that just like with the Black community, we feel that the East and South Asian part of the curriculum is totally misrepresented.
Yes. Yeah.
As well, and needs changing. So we decided to focus on that, and to do that successfully, we need to build up credibility.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would the CPS listen to us?
Yes.
Yeah. Why would the teachers union or the Department of Education listen to us? So we have a strategy over the next 3 to 5 years of gradually maybe working with academics, researchers, and with other groups that are much more longer established in the racism, anti-racism work, to begin to maybe write papers, publish papers, and gradually build up our credibility.
I'm thinking you guys need to be connected with the Birmingham Race Impact Group if you're not already, because you're doing similar things. Yeah.
And your question about the what kind of advice to give to other groups. I think the first thing is to be very clear of what your vision is, uh, and very clear about your strategic steps towards that vision.
Yes.
One of the things that I had to stop my fellow CARG colleagues is that they were responding to things, that they were reacting to incidents as they happen.
Right.
So there's something happened, they want to jump onto that particular issue. And then
Yes.
something else happened, they want to jump. I said, no.
Mm.
We are only a few of us.
Yes.
If you start chasing everything, you get nowhere.
Yeah. And get tired very quickly.
Yeah. And you get nowhere. So you got to be clear about what you want to achieve and just focus on that.
Yes.
Everything else is secondary.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it could be that some of our groups, because racism is such an emotional thing, there's a
Yes.
tendency to react
Yeah.
to things as they happen.
Yeah.
And that is time consuming.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. Again, it goes back to what you were saying about when you first got into the council. It's about how you framed what you were doing. And it's what I was saying about you. You're very strategic. Look, this is where we're going, right? And so, when I'm speaking to HR managers, directors, CEOs, and so on, that is something to say. It is about trying as much as possible to take the emotion out of the conversation. It's and that's difficult. It's difficult because we all have a socially constructed race, and therefore you have your opinion on the things that are happening. But if your work is strategic, just like every other strategy or policy, you take the emotion out of it and you focus on the task at hand. Yeah, absolutely.
And pass it on.
Yeah.
So for example, when one of my colleagues wanted to respond to some individuals that had that experienced some racist incident and wanted us to do something about it, I said no. There are other groups that does these things.
Yes.
Just signpost it to them.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no need for us to get involved at all.
Yeah, and I think that's really great as well when thinking about smaller organizations that are serious about combating racism. We don't all have to do the same things. Like, we're focused on the education. That's all we do. We don't do the activism stuff. That's all we do. We don't do the policy stuff. We focus on the education, and I think that's it. We're all, this is a big beast. It took a long time to grow. It's here now, and it's going to take a long time to destroy that beast. And so, like you say, there's many different ways in which to do that, and it's not a competition. We're all a part of the same battle. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. It's not a competition. Yes. We should not compete with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to tell you a story of something that happened when I was in the Birmingham City Council, which might be interesting for you in terms of workplace issues. There was a time when I had a black person as my subordinate, and she, because I was POA, she felt that I could be a champion for minorities in the council. And what happened was that the unit that we were in, myself and her, I was then told by my boss at the time that he wants to close down the unit.
Right.
Yeah. And so I told my subordinate that our boss is wanting to close down our unit, and you better start thinking about where you want to go, what you want to do. Right. Because within the council, they will reallocate you to somewhere else. Somehow she took offense at that, and she felt that I did not fight back enough.
Okay. Right.
And she made a complaint to HR that I did not defend in front of the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I went, I was interviewed, had to face a panel and all that, the stuff that you had to go through, and I was cleared. I was cleared of the accusation she made.
Mm-hmm.
But that was quite an interesting experience for me.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why. What were you thinking in response to? Yeah, it's difficult without having the other side of the story. But I'm just wondering, like, what were your thoughts about her accusation?
Um, I wasn't angry with her or anything like that. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand
Mm-hmm.
why, and even today I don't fully understand why she felt that way. But the issue is that I think is differences of. I never saw myself as a champion for minority groups in the council, for
Yeah,
one thing.
yeah.
So it was a bit of a surprise to me that people see me
Yeah,
to be a champion.
I think,
Mm,
what I would think, and again, it's difficult without knowing the full situation,
mm,
but I think often when you are certainly a Black person who's gone through racism all their lives, when you see another ethnic minority person in a position of leadership, you would
mm,
hope that if
mm,
there's any reason to kind of like, um, you know, champion or support that person, that
mm,
that person in leadership would do that. Um, that's not always the case. People are
mm,
individuals. Sometimes people just don't care. And maybe she felt as though, well, oh, maybe he just doesn't care, and I'm angry about that. I don't know. I don't know. But
mm.
that can be the situation.
Mm,
Is that people feel as though we should be bonded within, this discrimination that we face, and that could have
mm.
been what was going on.
I think you're right. You're right. I mean, her experience of racism would be much, much, much more than I would
Mm,
have. And part of the bond that she has with me is that she would have expected me to defend her more, to
yeah.
support her more. I felt that by giving her advice to start looking for new jobs within the
Mm,
council, I was
mm,
doing that, but it was
okay.
obviously not enough.
Yeah, yeah,
But I
yeah.
but
It's
at
diff
that at that time I would not have known how to do it either.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think one thing I've learned about racism over the years, which is now makes so much sense when talking to different people who experience racism on
Mm,
different levels, is that it happens on a continuum. That the darker you are in society, the worse your treatment on a group level of
mm,
racism. And I didn't understand that at first. So when talking to a friend who's Indian or whatever, and they're not quite understanding where I'm coming from with regards
mm,
to experiences. Like I couldn't quite penetrate. Like, why don't you get it? 'Cause you get racism like I get racism, but no, it's not quite at the same level on a group level. So it's, we're not all brought up having this education, even though, I'm a Black person, I'm who's in her
mm,
40s. I'm still learning, we're all still learning. There's a lot of conversations that are still yet to be had. So it's just about, for me, it's about as Maya Angelou said, that once you know better, you do better. But maybe she thinks differently about how that all panned out now. Who knows?
mm.
But yeah, just the nature of the
Just
beast.
just just an interesting episode in my life.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all.
But thank you so much for sharing, because again,
Mm,
it's important to have these conversations, and it would be so interesting for you and her, like
mm,
years later, if you were to have that
mm,
conversation to kind of unpick what was going on for her. And I think
mm,
often people just like you say, they have um the emotion can get so in the way that it makes the conversation difficult. And if we can just kind of not we don't have to get rid of it because we're all human, but just learn to park it for a little bit, to allow the conversation to happen, allow ourselves to be vulnerable, know that we might get things
mm.
wrong, or all of that, then we can have a conversation about it. So yeah, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's been so insightful, and I think the biggest thing I'm taking away from this conversation is just how to frame how you deal with racism. And I know that's different for you as somebody who has a Chinese background, but I think it has a lot of value, because whether we like it or not, racism exists. So that,
Yes.
that's a conversation we're having a lot now. It's like, well, okay, this exists. So how do I deal with it? Um, because you can't always be being that activist. You can't always be getting angry. There has to be a way of you dealing with it personally. So, I certainly want that to be, shouted loud from this podcast, that, we can think differently about how we sit in this. And I think, again, for organizations, for leaders, they can think differently about how they enable policies and procedures to grow and develop in terms of anti-racism and anti-discrimination. That if, again, you can just park that emotion, or just, when times get difficult, maybe put it down for a bit, but then come back to it. Try and keep that emotion out of it, so you can keep on track and keep going towards your goal. It makes sense. It's simple. So yeah, thank you for leaving us with those messages, and thank you for joining us on the Compassionate Cultures podcast.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recording.